Chapter 1. The Offer You Can't Accept. I was 41 and I had learned how to survive in silence. 12-hour days, 7 years at Velhorn Global, a mid-sized logistics company where people vanished if they made too much noise or stood in the wrong shadow. I didn't climb the ladder, I held it steady. Senior Operations Analyst, Division 3. I kept the numbers clean, the reports tight, and my mouth shut. That was the unspoken rule. And I followed it. Until that Tuesday morning in Clarissa Wynn's glass-walled office, when the rules changed. She was the company's new rising star, promoted to VP of Business Strategy just 6 months ago. Sharp, ambitious, magnetic in a way that made people lower their guard without knowing why. The board called her visionary. I called her dangerous. And as I stood in front of her mahogany desk, staring at her smile, the kind that showed teeth, I knew I was right. It comes with extra duties, she said, leaning back slowly in her chair. Discretion. Loyalty. You know what I mean. I did. And I hated that I did. Her voice had dropped an octave, low and intentional. Her fingers drummed a rhythm on the desk like she was playing a private game. The language was corporate, but the offer was personal. And unmistakable. 7 years of reading between the lines taught me to spot trouble early. This wasn't mentorship. This wasn't about leadership or development or aligning with future goals. This was about control, wrapped in a promotion, masked as a special opportunity. I kept my face neutral. I appreciate the offer, I said, adjusting my tie, but I'll have to decline. The shift in her expression was slight, but lethal. Her smile faltered. Just for a moment. Then the ice set in. Real men, she said, know how to seize opportunities. I didn't answer. Just turned, walked out, and closed the door behind me. But the air outside her office felt colder than when I walked in. And deep in my gut, something told me this wasn't over. Chapter 2. The Execution. The silence after saying no was louder than anything I'd ever heard. At first, nothing seemed different. The office buzzed as usual, keyboards clicked, phones rang, and coffee cups passed between cubicles like it was any other week. But the shift was subtle, insidious. Meetings I was supposed to lead were suddenly reassigned. Weekly reports bypassed me. Clarissa stopped lingering near my desk, and started watching from across the floor. She didn't need to say a word. Her power didn't come from shouting. It came from silence, exclusion, the slow, strategic removal of relevance. It was like I was vanishing, one responsibility at a time. Then came the rumors. Not from strangers, but from people I had mentored, shared lunches with, stayed late to help. One by one they started avoiding eye contact. Conversations stopped when I entered a room. A few even looked at me like I was a liability. Like they knew something I didn't. By Friday, my access to internal databases had been restructured. IT said it was routine. I knew better. And then Monday morning it happened. Sandra from HR appeared at my cubicle with an envelope clutched like it burned her fingers. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. Effective immediately, the letter read, "Your employment with Velhorn Global is terminated due to insubordination and failure to align with company values." I read it twice. The words were clean, corporate, deceptively calm. "This is a mistake," I said quietly. Sandra just nodded. "It came from executive level. I don't have details." Details weren't the problem. I already knew the truth. Security showed up 5 minutes later. 2 guards. Neutral faces. One filled out paperwork while the other watched me pack what little I had left of my career. A coffee mug, a photo of Chloe, a backup phone charger, a framed service award that now felt like a joke. 10 minutes. That's all it took to erase 7 years of service. As they walked me through the lobby, I saw her, Clarissa, standing near the elevators talking to another executive. Her posture was relaxed, but her eyes were locked on me. She smiled. Not friendly. Not polite. Triumphant. She didn't need to say it again. I heard the words anyway. Real men know how to seize opportunities. And in that moment, as I stepped into the parking garage with my life in a box and my future in limbo, I realized something. She thought I was done. She thought I'd crawl away quietly. But Clarissa Wynn had just made the biggest mistake of her career. She underestimated the wrong man. Chapter 3. The Pattern. I drove home in silence. The city moved around me like it always did, cars honking, lights changing, people living their lives. Meanwhile, I sat in the driver's seat of my Honda, replaying everything. Every smirk. Every comment. Every coincidence in the weeks before I got fired. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was a pattern. And patterns were my specialty. When I got home, I didn't even take off my jacket. I went straight to my home office, powered up my encrypted backup drive, and started digging. What I found wasn't just suspicion. It was evidence, unfiltered, unplanned but real. Screenshots of late-night messages from Clarissa. Calendar invites labeled as strategy syncs that somehow always landed at high-end restaurants. Emails full of compliments that read more like subtle promises than professional feedback. Meeting summaries where business blurred into something personal. I even had voice recordings, just part of my habit of documenting complex discussions for report accuracy. But one in particular hit different. Clarissa on speakerphone, her voice softened with what sounded like whine. Career advancement, salary bumps, special projects. I take care of people who take care of me. I had kept it without thinking. Now it felt like insurance. The next morning, I called Velhorn's employee hotline and requested a meeting with compliance. They scheduled me for Wednesday afternoon. Jessica Barnes, Senior Compliance Officer. Straight-faced, polite, and utterly unreadable. I understand you have concerns about your termination, she said as I placed a thick folder on her desk. More than concerns, I told her. I have documentation. We walked through it together, emails, timelines, voice clips. Everything. She barely flinched until I played the audio recording. Then she blinked. What? This is extensive, she said finally. I'll need to consult with legal and follow up by the end of the week. I left her office cautiously hopeful. It felt like something might finally tip in my favor. 3 days later the call came. And everything collapsed. After reviewing your materials, Jessica began, her voice detached and rehearsed, we've determined your termination was justified. Performance issues predating the events you described support the company's decision. What performance issues? I asked. We cannot disclose details, she replied. But several colleagues corroborated a pattern of insubordination. Mr. Wynn denied all allegations. The company found no evidence of policy violations. Mr. Wynn? I didn't say anything at first. I couldn't. The name echoed in my head like a gunshot in a canyon. Wynn? I repeated. Did you mean Clarissa Wynn? I'm afraid I've shared all I can, she said. Your termination stands. I sat at my kitchen table for hours after that, staring at nothing. She hadn't just fired me. She'd rewritten my history. Painted me as difficult. Unprofessional. A liability. She'd poisoned my name, and made sure I'd never have the credibility to fight back. Later that night I called Derek, my old cubicle neighbor. The guy I'd trained. Covered for. Trusted. Look, he said quietly. I don't want to get involved. Company policy, you know? What did she say about me? Pause. Long awkward. She said you'd been making inappropriate comments. About female coworkers. That you were struggling to take feedback. The line went dead. And everything clicked. Clarissa hadn't just retaliated. She had prepared for it. Laid the groundwork. Created documentation. Turned allies into silence. Coworkers into distance. Truth into suspicion. But in doing all that, she revealed something else too. Something important. She thought I was out of moves. She thought she was safe. She had no idea. I had only just begun. Chapter 4. Digging deeper. I've always believed that clarity comes when you strip away emotion. That's what made me good at my job. Cold logic, clean systems, no shortcuts. And now, I applied that same discipline to something I never thought I'd have to do. Rebuilding the truth of my own life piece by piece. But I knew I needed help. So I called Marcus Thompson. A former detective turned private investigator, Marcus ran a quiet firm out of a downtown office above a pawn shop. His voice was steady, his handshake firm, his eyes sharp like he saw through the surface of everything you didn't say. I want to know how far this goes, I told him. Clarissa didn't just fire me. She buried me. And I need to understand how. He leaned back, arms crossed, listening. Then he quoted a number that made me wince, but I paid it. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about surviving what she thought I couldn't. Give me 2 weeks, he said. Let's see what shakes loose. While Marcus started digging, I ran my own investigation. Nights spent combing LinkedIn profiles, old company newsletters, archived press releases. What I found disturbed me more than I was ready for. Clarissa's rise wasn't just fast. It was surgical. She joined Velhorn Global just 18 months ago. Promoted to director after 6. VP after another 6. And every one of those promotions came right after someone else's sudden departure. Thomas Reed, Director of Strategic Planning before Clarissa. Left, for personal reasons, just weeks before her first bump. His LinkedIn showed him now working for a third-tier logistics firm in Jacksonville. Patricia Ongwin, once the board's favorite for VP. Resigned to pursue new opportunities days before Clarissa got the nod. She was currently unemployed. Kevin Walsh, 12 years with the company. Terminated 3 months ago. No new job. No public reason. She didn't climb the ladder, she cleared it of anyone in her way. But then Marcus called. And things got darker. Your boss has a pattern, he said flatly. 3 companies before Velhorn. Same story. Rapid promotions. Exit trails. NDAs. Non-disclosure agreements. Legal hush money. Silence bought and sealed. I found 2 guys willing to talk, off the record, Marcus added. Their stories match yours. Personal advances, retaliation, career destruction. I listened quietly, rage twisting in my chest. How does she keep getting away with this? Money. Power. Smart lawyers. And she picks the right targets, guys with families, bills, reputations to protect. People who can't afford to fight. He was right. And it made sense. She didn't just seduce. She calculated. That night, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. Clarissa wasn't a bad boss. She was a predator. Corporate. Strategic. Institutional. And the only reason she kept getting away with it was because no one ever pushed back hard enough. But what if someone did? The next morning, I made 3 calls that would change everything. The first was to Thomas Reed in Jacksonville. It took persuasion, but eventually he agreed to meet. We sat across from each other at a coffee shop, 2 men shaped by the same fire. She ruins lives for sport, Thomas said, stirring his cup with a shaky hand. I spent 15 grand trying to fight it. Got nowhere. She'd started building fake write-ups 6 months before she moved on me. The whole case was legally airtight. I slid a folder toward him. What if we worked together? Pool our evidence. He shook his head. NDA. I can't touch anything official. Then his hand slipped into his coat. But if someone happened to discover a few things on their own? A flash drive hit the table. The second call was to Patricia. She wouldn't meet in person, but she agreed to a secure phone conversation. She'll never stop, she whispered. Because no one's ever stopped her. She's protected. She knows exactly how to play the system. What if we change the system? I asked. Make it cost more to protect her than to expose her. The silence on the other end wasn't resistance. It was calculation. Then maybe you have a chance. The third call was the most important. It was to a journalist, Rebecca Foster, senior investigative reporter for the Charlotte Observer. She specialized in corporate malpractice, whistleblower cases, scandals that burned brighter because no one wanted them seen. When I outlined the story, she was silent for a long moment. Serial retaliation, sexual harassment, corporate cover-up, she finally said. That's exactly the kind of story we run. But I need more than one voice. And I need documentation that can't be buried. I have both, I said. Give me 2 weeks. All right, Mr. Wyatt, she said. Let's find out who Clarissa Wind really is. And that was the moment the storm began to gather. She thought she had silenced me. She had no idea what I was about to unleash. Chapter 5, The Whistleblower. 2 weeks. That's what I gave myself. 14 days to do what no one else had done, build a wall of truth strong enough to outlast her web of lies. I started with the names Marcus had uncovered. 8 men. Different companies. Different cities. Same story. Clarissa Wind had left more wreckage than a hurricane, and most of it was buried under NDAs. Some refused to speak. They were afraid, tired, resigned to what had happened. But others were angry. Some had lost jobs. Some had lost marriages. One had nearly lost everything. 4 of them agreed to go on record. Patricia remained anonymous but gave permission to use her story. Thomas, legally barred from testifying, handed me folders marked accidentally saved. And David Brooks, Clarissa's first known victim at Velhorn, turned out to be the missing puzzle piece. I documented everything, he told me during a secure Zoom call. She tried the same thing with me. I had emails, voice recordings, even a witness. But when I threatened to sue, Velhorn's lawyers offered me a small settlement, or war. He chose silence. But now, hearing about the others, he chose differently. What if cost wasn't an issue? I asked him. What do you mean? I mean we go public. We go together. Not in court. In the press. David was quiet for a long time. Then, you really think we can take her down? I think we can make staying silent more expensive than speaking up. That weekend, I sat down with Rebecca Foster in person. We met in a private booth at a diner outside Charlotte. She wore a faded leather jacket, glasses low on her nose, notepad in one hand, recorder in the other. She listened, really listened like she had all the time in the world. I gave her everything. Emails, texts, voice memos, testimonies, Clarissa's pattern, Velhorn's silence. My own story, raw and unfiltered. I didn't sugarcoat anything. This won't be easy, she said when we finished. She'll push back. She'll try to discredit you, dig up dirt, ruin what's left of your name. I've got nothing left to lose, I told her. Let her try. Rebecca nodded once. We're going to break this as a 3-part series. First, her pattern. Then the company's cover-up. Third, your voices. I walked out of that meeting feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. The first article dropped on a Tuesday morning. The headline was brutal. Corporate Predator. How one executive rose to power by destroying the men who refused her. By noon it had gone viral. The story included testimony from 4 victims, screenshots of emails, transcribed voice clips, and damning notes from internal memos. It didn't just paint Clarissa as a problem. It exposed her as a systematic threat enabled by corporate cowardice. Social media exploded. LinkedIn lit up. Velhorn's stock price dropped 12% by end of day. Advocacy groups started tagging the company in every post. Reporters flooded their inboxes. By 2 p.m., Velhorn Global issued a vague statement. We are aware of the allegations and are reviewing the matter internally. I watched it all unfold from my kitchen table, the article open on one screen, and my daughter's school photo beside it on the other. That night I didn't sleep. But not because of anxiety. Because of momentum. The second article dropped Wednesday morning. The cover-up, How Corporations Enable Abuse Behind Closed Doors. It was more than a continuation. It was a sledgehammer. Rebecca had dug into HR's complicity, the NDAs, the false performance reports, the ways companies create legal insulation around predators like Clarissa. It named names carefully. Cited documents. Showed timelines. And most importantly, it asked questions shareholders didn't want to answer. That afternoon, Clarissa's LinkedIn profile vanished. By 6 p.m., a source inside Velhorn confirmed to Rebecca. Clarissa Wind had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. But the best was yet to come. The third article ran Friday. Breaking the silence. Victims speak out against corporate harassment. This one was personal. My name. My face. My words. Alongside 3 other men who refused to let shame or fear define them anymore. We told the truth, ugly, painful, and full of scars. The response was overwhelming. Emails. Messages. Comments from strangers saying they had lived it too or feared they would. Men. Women. Workers from all industries. The silent found a voice. And then a text. It came late Friday night. From Rebecca. Emergency board meeting this weekend. Source says her termination is a foregone conclusion. I stared at the message, phone trembling in my hand. She was falling. But I wasn't celebrating yet. Because when people like Clarissa fall, they don't fall quietly. They try to drag others down with them. And I needed to be ready for that. Chapter 6, The Fall. Sunday afternoon, Velhorn Global issued a press release so sterile it could have been written by a lawyer in their sleep. Following a comprehensive internal review, Velhorn Global has terminated Clarissa Wind for violations of corporate conduct policies. We remain committed to a safe and professional workplace for all employees. No mention of the victims. No apology. No admission of how long they let it happen. But it was done. Clarissa Wind, the untouchable executive who used her power like a weapon, was gone. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just stood in the doorway of my home office and stared out at the city, Charlotte's skyline stretching in the distance. 7 years. One decision. One refusal. And it had nearly cost me everything. But now the scales had started to shift. That same evening, Marcus called with another update. 2 of her previous employers are reopening old complaints, he said. Looks like they're preparing for potential lawsuits. One of them just announced an external ethics review. I let out a slow breath. It's happening, isn't it? It's starting, Marcus said. She's not just a PR problem anymore. She's a liability. He paused. Then added, You started something here, Liam. Bigger than you think. I didn't know how to respond to that. So I just said, thanks. 3 weeks later, I got a call from a company in Raleigh, Henderson Industries, a logistics firm with a solid reputation and a growing need for someone who understood the cost of getting it wrong. We've been following the story, the hiring manager said. And frankly, we need people like you. Detail-driven. Documented. Disciplined. The offer came with a 40% pay increase, full benefits, whistleblower protections, and Ironically, a corner office. I accepted. The last weekend before I started, I drove to Raleigh to pick up Chloe for our father-daughter day. She was waiting on her mom's porch, backpack over her shoulder, her front teeth missing from a recent growth spurt. She ran to the car like I was the best part of her world. "Mom said you got a new job," she said, climbing in. "Is it a good one?" I looked at her, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like a man on fire. I felt like a man standing again. "Yes, sweetheart," I said. "It's a good one." We spent the day at the Science Museum, just the two of us. Dinosaurs, galaxies, space pods. She refused to leave until we'd pressed every button. For a few hours there was no Clarissa. No HR meetings. No voice recordings or legal files. Just her laughter. Just quiet peace. That night, after I dropped her off and returned home, I found a message waiting for me from an unknown number. "Thank you. You gave me the courage to speak up about my situation." A friend. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It never really was. It was about this. Ripples. Truth set loose into the world where others could find it. And maybe, just maybe, change something because of it. Chapter 7. The Legacy. I never wanted to be the guy who made headlines. I just wanted to do my job, take care of my daughter, and go home with a clear conscience. I never wanted a war. But when the battlefield came to my door, I didn't run. And that made all the difference. In the weeks after the articles, things didn't go back to normal. They moved forward. I started my new role at Henderson Industries. My name was clean again, at least where it counted. My new coworkers didn't see me as a liability. They saw me as someone who had been tested and didn't break. And more than that, they listened. My boss asked for input on employee conduct policies. I helped build a new anonymous reporting system. I led a training on retaliation and documentation, and when I spoke, people didn't zone out. They paid attention. Because they knew my story. Because it was real. Every week, someone new reached out. Men from across the country, different industries, different ages. Some had faced bosses like Clarissa. Others were just afraid they might. They thanked me. They asked for advice. Some cried. I kept every message. Not for validation, but as a reminder. A reminder of why I fought. Chloe came over more often. We painted model rockets and read space books and made microwave s'mores even when it wasn't the weekend. She started calling my new office, the place where you beat the bad guys. I didn't correct her. Let her believe in heroes. Let her believe in standing up even when it costs you. Because one day she'll face her own moment of choice. And I want her to remember what I did with mine. I still get anxious sometimes. When my phone rings from an unknown number, when I see news about another executive scandal, when I read stories from new victims. But I don't feel powerless anymore. I kept documenting. I kept listening. I kept standing. And I'll keep doing that for as long as it takes. Because the truth is, some people rely on silence. They thrive in shadows and loopholes and polite complicity. But the second one voice says, enough, others follow. I didn't just lose a job. I found my voice. And every morning as I drive to work, past the office that once tossed me out like a problem to be contained, I remind myself. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's refusing to stay silent. It's building something better. Stronger. It's living a life that predators can't touch. And when the next person faces what I faced, maybe they won't feel so alone. Because now the silence is broken.